𝗩𝗶𝗱𝗂𝗁𝘁𝗀𝗋, where we teach you all about gardening in the great indoors. If you'd like to support my show and get help growing your houseplants, check out my Patreon below. Today we have a plant care video for this beauty Boston fern, botanically known as 𝗩𝗶𝗱𝗁𝘁𝗄𝗰𝘁𝗀𝗋 bostoniensis. This fern is one of the easiest to grow successfully indoors. Whereas some ferns wither up and die in the dry air typical in many homes, Boston fern thrives. Even better, this plant is one of the top choices for cleaning indoor air. Featuring these beautiful, roughly sword-like lime green fronds that can reach as long as 4 feet long, Boston fern creates an eye-catching display in a hanging basket. It also looks good cascading from a perch, such as from the top of a bookcase or entertainment center. Unlike many other ferns, Boston fern and its relatives are considered sterile. That means instead of relying on spores to grow new plants, Boston fern propagates by what are known as stolons. These come from the main plant and make contact with the soil, forming roots and then new plants. To have luck with Boston fern, keep the following growing tips in mind. Boston fern does best in an unobstructed northern window that receives medium indirect light throughout the day, or in an eastern-facing window that gets morning light. Avoid placing Boston fern in a south or west-facing window, as such locations are generally too bright and will burn the plant's foliage. The plant can also thrive under full-spectrum lighting. Watering. Boston fern does not respond well to drying out, so make sure to keep the plant evenly moist but not soggy. Perpetually soggy soil will lead to yellowing fronds and can result in root rot, whereas keeping the soil too dry will lead to leaf yellowing and leaf loss. And the leaf loss may not be the entire frond, but it will be pieces, the little leaflets on the frond will begin to yellow and fall off, making a big mess and also making your fronds not look too good. So you want to water when the moisture meter reads about 4, and the plant has become lighter when you pick it up, which I call the pickup test. So pick up the container and see if it's feeling lighter. That lighter feeling indicates that the soil moisture has been reduced. Always water with warm water, as you should with all houseplants, soaking the entire pot to saturate the soil. And be careful with this one too, because it does tend to grow tight in its pot, grows a lot of roots, and you want to make sure when you are watering it that the water isn't flowing over, but is actually saturating the soil. So that's where that pickup test really helps, because you can tell if it is heavier. When you're done watering, it should be substantially heavier than it was before you started watering it. And you can even though it's harder with things like terracotta, glazed ceramic pots, you can still feel more weight once a plant in those types of pots have been watered. Obviously plastic, it's a lot easier to figure out. A lot of times with hanging baskets, they are plastic anyway. Fertilizing. Fertilize Boston ferns spring through fall with an organic, well-balanced plant food. Regular fertilizing will ensure that the plant remains lush and full with plenty of new fronds. Because the fronds tend to grow tight in the pot, as I mentioned a bit ago, it's easiest to use a fertilizer that you can mix into water so that you can get the fertilizer to the roots easier that way than trying with a granular. I've linked a couple of fertilizers below that I like for this plant. Humidity. Although Boston fern responds well to low humidity in most homes, it does best with extra moisture in the air, ideally 50 to 60%. If you live in a dry climate, you can miss the plant and also use a hygrometer. I have a hygrometer here. You can see that the humidity level, which is the bottom number there, is pretty high humidity right now. I've got 66% humidity. Oh, so it even went up a bit there. Actually, the bottom, yes, the bottom number is the humidity, went up to 70%, which is even better. So the higher humidity you can get for these beauties, the better. If you do have low humidity, you will also get that leaf loss that I was talking about. And that is very problematic because it makes the plant not look good after a time. It's just the plant is just not happy. So do what you can to increase humidity. First, check with the hygrometer, and then do what you can. If it's staying under 50% on a regular basis, especially under 40%, the plant isn't going to be happy. So as mentioned, you can mist the plant, which it just absolutely loves. If you do mist, you want to mist the plant at least a couple times a day. I know it sounds like a lot, so misting is you do have to be a little dedicated with the misting. So but in that case, you'd want to have the mister available as you're walking by the plant. Give it a little spritz, and that will increase the moisture around the plant for a short period of time. Keeping the plants in more humid conditions, such as bathrooms that tend to get humid for periods of the day, is also a good place. And actually, this plant works really well in a lot of bathrooms, providing you do have some light, because it doesn't need that real bright light, as mentioned. So if you do have that medium indirect light in your bathroom, this plant could be very happy in there. The other things you can do in terms of increasing humidity, and I do have a humidity playlist which I will link in the description below, as well as any other videos and I mentioned in this video. Then the other ways, one way I was just going to mention is grouping your plants. So the more plants you have, the more humid the surroundings will be. I'm in one of my plant rooms here, so the humidity is pretty high, as you saw on that hygrometer. And so the more plants you get, the more humid it's going to be for your Boston fern, because plants humidify each other. So that gives you a really good reason to go get more Boston ferns or more plants in general. And if it is wintertime and you do need to use the heater, which does happen obviously, and the air does start to dry out, you can help your Boston fern get through the winter months by using a humidifier. And I do have a video on how to properly use humidifier for houseplants as well. Okay, so now temperature. The Boston fern really likes a temperature between 65 to 75 degrees in the day and a little cooler at night. You'll see on here that we are temperature-wise at 76.1, which is ideal for this plant. So they will really be happy in that sweet spot, 65 to 75. They can even go up, climb up a little bit towards 80 degrees, and then with a little bit of temperature drop at night, which generally will happen in most homes. If the temperatures are below 65 for extended periods of time, however, that will cause the plant to become stunted in its growth or slow down growth. So that is a very common scenario anyway. For instance, during the winter months, when these lower temperatures are likely to be happening for you. So it's okay if your plant slows down for 2-3 months out of the year. Just remember during that slowdown to still try to humidify the air so that it doesn't lose too many leaves for you, or leaflets, and also to keep it warm enough that to not get into too much lower than 65 degrees on an extended period of time, because it really could fail on you at that point. And then watering, of course, too, you do want to keep it moist, but make sure definitely during cold months not to have soggy soil that doesn't dry out quickly, because that will lead to root rot. Okay, so repotting for Boston ferns. They thrive in a soil that is rich in organic matter, much like all ferns. Repot yearly with an organic potting soil that is rich yet well draining. The mix should include peat moss and contain compost, and as well as a draining agent such as perlite or pumice. I will put a link below for a mix that I really like for most houseplants, and to that mix you could add a little bit extra compost, or even worm compost, which is a great addition. You can also use worm compost as a top dressing on this plant if you can get the compost in there. But mixing it into the soil is really good. And you want to repot spring through midsummer. So coming up here is a great time to repot within the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, and using, as mentioned, a high quality potting soil as well. So if you do a repot in 2 or 3 weeks from now, this plant's really going to do well for you throughout the spring, summer, and even into the fall. And then, of course, still do well in the winter months, but it will be actively growing in spring and summer. Pruning. Boston fern requires very little pruning. Simply clip off old yellowing fronds if the whole frond has yellowed at the base of the plant, and if only part of it has yellowed, then clip it off at that point wherever it is start yellowing. It's a good idea to do that too, to stop the plant from any further yellowing on that frond. Pests and diseases. Boston ferns rarely suffer from infestations, but it's a good idea to keep an eye out for a few annoying invaders, including mealybugs, spider mites, and scale insects. Mealybugs can be destroyed by spraying with 91 or 70% isopropyl alcohol and then rinsing the plant off, and then spraying again with neem oil after that. Mites can be avoided by making sure to keep the plants misted and the soil moist, as that pest thrives in dry conditions. And if you find scale insects on your ferns, cut off the affected fronds and then use my 2-step process for dealing with the scale. So if you find really infected fronds, just remove them all the way to the base. And then for the areas where you do find a few more scale and where you're not sure they are, then use my 2-step process mentioned prior with the mealybugs of treating with the 91 or 70% isopropyl alcohol, letting it sit for a while, rinsing, and then treating with neem oil. And I do have a video on that process, and actually several videos on treating scale and mealybugs as well. So there you go for getting this beauty to thrive in your indoor garden and really light up your houseplant collection. Thank you for stopping by today. Please leave any comments about any indoor gardening tutorials you'd like to see. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And please check the bell if you'd like to be notified when new videos are released.